The Love Detectives was first published in the USA as At the Crossroads in Flynn's Weekly, 30 Oct. 1926, and then as The Magic of Mr. Quin #1, At the Crossroads in Storyteller, December 1926. Little Mr. Satterthwaite looked thoughtfully across at his host. The friendship between these two men was an odd one. The colonel was a simple country gentleman whose passion in life was sport. The few weeks that he spent perforce in London, he spent unwillingly. Mr. Satterthwaite, on the other hand, was a town bird. He was an authority on French cooking, on ladies' dress, and on all the latest scandals. His passion was observing human nature, and he was an expert in his own special line, that of an onlooker at life. It would seem, therefore, that he and Colonel Melrose would have little in common, for the colonel had no interest in his neighbor's affairs and a horror of any kind of emotion. The two men were friends, mainly because their fathers before them had been friends. Also, they knew the same people and had reactionary views about nouveau riches. It was about 7:30. The two men were sitting in the colonel's comfortable study, and Melrose was describing a run of the previous winter with a keen hunting man's enthusiasm. Mr. Satterthwaite, whose knowledge of horses consisted chiefly of the time-honored Sunday morning visit to the stables which still obtains in old-fashioned country houses, listened with his invariable politeness. The sharp ringing of the telephone interrupted Melrose. He crossed to the table and took up the receiver. "Hello? Yes, Colonel Melrose speaking. What's that?" His whole demeanor altered, became stiff and official. It was the magistrate speaking now, not the sportsman. He listened for some moments, then said, laconically, "Right, Mick Curtis. I'll be over at once." He replaced the receiver and turned to his guest. "Sir James Dwighton has been found in his library, murdered." "What?" Mr. Satterthwaite was startled, thrilled. "I must go over to Alderway at once. Care to come with me?" Mr. Satterthwaite remembered that the colonel was chief constable of the county. "If I shan't be in the way—" He hesitated. "Not at all. That was Inspector Curtis telephoning. Good, honest fellow, but no brains. I'd be glad if you would come with me. Satterthwaite, I've got an idea. This is going to turn out a nasty business." "Have they got the fellow who did it?" "No," replied Melrose shortly. Mr. Satterthwaite's trained ear detected a nuance of reserve behind the curt negative. He began to go over in his mind all that he knew of the Dwightons. A pompous old fellow, the late Sir James, brusque in his manner, a man that might easily make enemies, veering on 60, with grizzled hair and a florid face, reputed to be tight-fisted in the extreme. His mind went on to Lady Dwighton. Her image floated before him, young, auburn-haired, slender. He remembered various rumors, hints, odd bits of gossip. So that was it. That was why Melrose looked so glum. Then he pulled himself up. His imagination was running away with him. 5 minutes later, Mr. Satterthwaite took his place beside his host in the latter's little two-seater, and they drove off together into the night. The colonel was a taciturn man. They had gone quite a mile and a half before he spoke. Then he jerked out abruptly, "You know 'em, I suppose? The Dwightons, I know all about them. Of course." Who was there? Mr. Satterthwaite didn't know all about. "I've met him once, I think." and her rather oftener. Pretty woman, said Melrose. Beautiful, declared Mr. Satterthwaite. Think so. A pure Renaissance type, declared Mr. Satterthwaite, warming up to his theme. She acted in those theatricals, the charity matinee, you know, last spring. I was very much struck. Nothing modern about her. A pure survival. One can imagine her in the Doge's palace, or as Lucrezia Borgia. The colonel let the car swerve slightly, and Mr. Satterthwaite came to an abrupt stop. He wondered what fatality had brought the name of Lucrezia Borgia to his tongue. Under the circumstances, Dwighton was not poisoned. Was he? He asked abruptly. Melrose looked at him sideways, somewhat curiously. Why do you ask that? I wonder, he said. Oh, I don't know. Mr. Satterthwaite was flustered. It just occurred to me. Well, he wasn't, said Melrose gloomily. If you want to know, he was crashed on the head. With a blunt instrument, murmured Mr. Satterthwaite, nodding his head sagely. Don't talk like a damn detective story. Satterthwaite, he was hit on the head with a bronze figure. Oh, said Satterthwaite, and relapsed into silence. Know anything of a chap called Paul de Langlois? Asked Melrose, after a minute or two. Yes. Good-looking young fellow. I dare say women would call him so, growled the colonel. You don't like him. No, I don't. I should have thought you would have. He rides very well. Like a foreigner at the horse show, full of monkey tricks. Mr. Satterthwaite suppressed a smile. Poor old Melrose was so very British in his outlook. Agreeably conscious himself of a cosmopolitan point of view, Mr. Satterthwaite was able to deplore the insular attitude toward life. Has he been down in this part of the world? He asked. He's been staying at Alderway with the Dwightons. The rumor goes that Sir James kicked him out a week ago. Why? Found him making love to his wife, I suppose. What the hell? There was a violent swerve and a jarring impact. Most dangerous crossroads in England, said Melrose. All the same, the other fellow should have sounded his horn. We're on the main road. I fancy we've damaged him, rather more than he has damaged us. He sprang out. A figure alighted from the other car and joined him. Fragments of speech reached Satterthwaite. Entirely my fault, I'm afraid. The stranger was saying, but I do not know this part of the country very well, and there's absolutely no sign of any kind to show you're coming onto the main road. The colonel, mollified, rejoined suitably. The two men bent together over the stranger's car, which a chauffeur was already examining. The conversation became highly technical. A matter of half an hour, I'm afraid, said the stranger. But don't let me detain you. I'm glad your car escaped injury as well as it did. As a matter of fact, the colonel was beginning, but he was interrupted. Mr. Satterthwaite, seething with excitement, hopped out of the car with a bird-like action and seized the stranger warmly by the hand. It is I thought I recognized the voice, he declared excitedly. What an extraordinary thing. What a very extraordinary thing. Eh? Said Colonel Melrose. Harley Quin? Melrose. I'm sure you've heard me speak many times of Mr. Quin. Colonel Melrose did not seem to remember the fact, but he assisted politely at the scene while Mr. Satterthwaite was chirruping gaily on. I haven't seen you. Let me see. Since the night at the Bells in Motley, said the other quietly. The Bells in Motley, eh? Said the colonel. An inn, explained Mr. Satterthwaite. What an odd name for an inn. Only an old one, said Mr. Quin. There was a time, remember, when bells and motley were more common in England than they are nowadays. I suppose so. Yes, no doubt you are right, said Melrose vaguely. He blinked. By a curious effect of light, the headlights of one car and the red tail light of the other, Mr. Quin seemed for a moment to be dressed in motley himself. But it was only the light. We can't leave you here stranded on the road, continued Mr. Satterthwaite. You must come along with us. There's plenty of room for 3, isn't there? Melrose? Oh, rather. But the colonel's voice was a little doubtful. The only thing is, he remarked, the job we're on, eh? Satterthwaite. Mr. Satterthwaite stood stock still. Ideas leaped and flashed over him. He positively shook with excitement. No, he cried. No. I should have known better. There is no chance where you are concerned. Mr. Quin, it was not an accident that we all met tonight at the crossroads. Colonel Melrose stared at his friend in astonishment. Mr. Satterthwaite took him by the arm. You remember what I told you about our friend Derek Capel, the motive for his suicide, which no one could guess. It was Mr. Quin who solved that problem, and there have been others since. He shows you things that are there all the time, but which you haven't seen. He's marvelous. My dear Satterthwaite, you are making me blush, said Mr. Quin, smiling. As far as I can remember, these discoveries were all made by you, not by me. They were made because you were there, said Mr. Satterthwaite with intense conviction. Well, said Colonel Melrose, clearing his throat uncomfortably. We mustn't waste any more time. Let's get on. He climbed into the driver's seat. He was not too well pleased at having the stranger foisted upon him through Mr. Satterthwaite's enthusiasm, but he had no valid objection to offer, and he was anxious to get on to Alderway as fast as possible. Mr. Satterthwaite urged Mr. Quin in next, and himself took the outside seat. The car was a roomy one, and took 3 without undue squeezing. So you are interested in crime, Mr. Quin, said the colonel, doing his best to be genial. No, not exactly in crime. What in then? Mr. Quin smiled. Let us ask Mr. Satterthwaite. He is a very shrewd observer. I think, said Satterthwaite slowly, I may be wrong, but I think that Mr. Quin is interested in lovers. He blushed as he said the last word, which is one no Englishman can pronounce without self-consciousness. Mr. Satterthwaite brought it out apologetically, and with an effect of inverted commas. By gad, said the colonel, startled and silenced. He reflected inwardly that this seemed to be a very rum friend of Satterthwaite's. He glanced at him sideways. The fellow looked all right. Quite a normal young chap, rather dark, but not at all foreign-looking. And now, said Satterthwaite importantly, I must tell you all about the case. He talked for some 10 minutes, sitting there in the darkness, rushing through the night. He had an intoxicating feeling of power. What did it matter if he were only a looker-on at life? He had words at his command. He was master of them. He could string them to a pattern, a strange Renaissance pattern composed of the beauty of Laura Dwighton, with her white arms and red hair, and the shadowy dark figure of Paul de Langlois, whom women found handsome. Set that against the background of Alderway. Alderway that had stood since the days of Henry VII, And some said, before that, Alderway, that was English to the core, with its clipped yew and its old beak barn and the fish pond, where monks had kept their carp for Fridays. In a few deft strokes, he had etched in Sir James. A Dwighton, who was a true descendant of the old De Wittons, who long ago had wrung money out of the land and locked it fast in coffers, so that whoever else had fallen on evil days, the masters of Alderway had never become impoverished. At last, Mr. Satterthwaite ceased, he was sure, had been sure all along, of the sympathy of his audience. He waited now, the word of praise, which was his due. It came. You are an artist, Mr. Satterthwaite. I do my best. The little man was suddenly humble. They had turned in at the lodge gates some minutes ago. Now the car drew up in front of the doorway, and a police constable came hurriedly down the steps to meet them. Good evening, sir. Inspector Curtis is in the library. Right. Melrose ran up the steps, followed by the other two. As the three of them passed across the wide hall, an elderly butler peered from a doorway apprehensively. Melrose nodded to him. Evening, Miles. This is a sad business. It is indeed, the other quavered. I can hardly believe it, sir. Indeed, I can't. To think that anyone should strike down the master. Yes, yes, said Melrose, cutting him short. I'll have a talk with you presently. He strode on to the library. There a big, soldierly-looking inspector greeted him with respect. Nasty business. Sir, I have not disturbed things. No fingerprints on the weapon. Whoever did it knew his business. Mr. Satterthwaite looked at the bowed figure sitting at the big writing table and looked hurriedly away again. The man had been struck down from behind, a smashing blow that had crashed in the skull. The sight was not a pretty one. The weapon lay on the floor, a bronze figure about 2 feet high, the base of it stained and wet. Mr. Satterthwaite bent over it curiously. A Venus, he said softly. So he was struck down by Venus. He found food for poetic meditation in the thought. The windows, said the inspector, were all closed and bolted on the inside. He paused significantly. Making an inside job of it, said the chief constable reluctantly. Well, we'll see. The murdered man was dressed in golf clothes, and a bag of golf clubs had been flung untidily across a big leather couch. Just come in from the links, explained the inspector, following the chief constable's glance. At 5:15, that was, had tea brought here by the butler. Later he rang for his valet to bring him down a pair of soft slippers. As far as we can tell, the valet was the last person to see him alive. Melrose nodded and turned his attention once more to the writing table. A good many of the ornaments had been overturned and broken. Prominent among these was a big, dark enamel clock, which lay on its side in the very center of the table. The inspector cleared his throat. That's what you might call a piece of luck, sir, he said. As you see, it stopped at 6:30. That gives us the time of the crime. Very convenient. The colonel was staring at the clock. As you say, he remarked, very convenient. He paused a minute and then added, too damned convenient, I don't like it. Inspector? He looked around at the other two. His eye sought Mr. Quin's with a look of appeal in it. "Damn it all," he said. "It's too neat. You know what I mean. Things don't happen like that." "You mean," murmured Mr. Quin, "that clocks don't fall like that." Melrose stared at him for a moment, then back at the clock, which had that pathetic and innocent look familiar to objects which have been suddenly bereft of their dignity. "Oh, stay." Very carefully, Colonel Melrose replaced it on its legs again. He struck the table a violent blow. The clock rocked, but it did not fall. Melrose repeated the action, and very slowly, with a kind of unwillingness, the clock fell over on its back. "What time was the crime discovered?" demanded Melrose sharply. "Just about 7 o'clock, sir." "Who discovered it?" "The butler." "Fetch him in," said the chief constable. "I'll see him now. Where is Lady Dwighton, by the way?" "Lying down, sir. Her maid says that she's prostrated and can't see anyone." Melrose nodded, and Inspector Curtis went in search of the butler. Mr. Quin was looking thoughtfully into the fireplace. Mr. Satterthwaite followed his example. He blinked at the smoldering logs for a minute or two, and then something bright lying in the grate caught his eye. He stooped and picked up a little sliver of curved glass. "You wanted me, sir." It was the butler's voice, still quavering and uncertain. Mr. Satterthwaite slipped the fragment of glass into his waistcoat pocket and turned round. The old man was standing in the doorway. "Sit down," said the chief constable kindly. "You're shaking all over. It's been a shock to you, I expect." "It has indeed, sir." "Well, I shan't keep you long. Your master came in just after 5, I believe?" "Yes, sir." "He ordered tea to be brought to him here. Afterward, when I came to take it away, he asked for Jennings to be sent to him. That's his valet, sir." "What time was that?" "About 10 minutes past 6, sir." "Yes, well, I sent word to Jennings, sir, and it wasn't till I came in here to shut the windows and draw the curtains at 7 o'clock that I saw." Melrose cut him short. "Yes, yes. You needn't go into all that. You didn't touch the body or disturb anything, did you?" "Oh, no, indeed. Sir, I went as fast as I could go to the telephone to ring up the police. And then I told Jane, her ladyship's maid, sir, to break the news to her ladyship. You haven't seen your mistress at all this evening." Colonel Melrose put the question casually enough, but Mr. Satterthwaite's keen ears caught anxiety behind the words. "Not to speak to, sir. Her ladyship has remained in her own apartment since the tragedy." "Did you see her before?" The question came sharply, and everyone in the room noted the hesitation before the butler replied. I just caught a glimpse of her, sir, descending the staircase." "Did she come in here?" Mr. Satterthwaite held his breath. I think so, sir." "What time was that?" "You might have heard a pin drop. Did the old man know?" Mr. Satterthwaite wondered. What hung on his answer? "It was just upon 6:30, sir." Colonel Melrose drew a deep breath. "That will do. Thank you. Just send Jennings, the valet, to me. Will you?" Jennings answered the summons with promptitude. A narrow-faced man, with a cat-like tread. Something sly and secretive about him. A man, thought Mr. Satterthwaite, who would easily murder his master if he could be sure of not being found out. He listened eagerly to the man's answers to Colonel Melrose's questions, but his story seemed straightforward enough. He had brought his master down some soft hide slippers and removed the brogues. "What did you do after that, Jennings?" "I went back to the steward's room, sir." "At what time did you leave your master?" "It must have been just after 6:15, sir." "Where were you at 6:30? Jennings." "In the steward's room, sir." Colonel Melrose dismissed the man with a nod. He looked across at Curtis inquiringly. "Quite correct, sir. I checked that up. He was in the steward's room from about 6:20 until 7 o'clock." "Then that lets him out," said the chief constable a trifle regretfully. "Besides, there's no motive." They looked at each other. There was a tap at the door. "Come in," said the colonel. A scared-looking lady's maid appeared. "If you please, her ladyship has heard that Colonel Melrose is here, and she would like to see him." "Certainly," said Melrose. "I'll come at once. Will you show me the way?" But a hand pushed the girl aside. A very different figure now stood in the doorway. Laura Dwighton looked like a visitor from another world. She was dressed in a clinging medieval tea gown of dull blue brocade. Her auburn hair was parted in the middle and brought down over her ears. Conscious of the fact she had a style of her own, Lady Dwighton had never had her hair cut. It was drawn back into a simple knot on the nape of her neck. Her arms were bare. One of them was outstretched to steady herself against the frame of the doorway. The other hung down by her side, clasping a book. She looks, Mr. Satterthwaite thought, like a Madonna from an early Italian canvas. She stood there, swaying slightly from side to side. Colonel Melrose sprang toward her. "I've come to tell you, to tell you." Her voice was low and rich. Mr. Satterthwaite was so entranced with the dramatic value of the scene that he had forgotten its reality. "Please, Lady Dwighton." Melrose had an arm round her, supporting her. He took her across the hall into a small anteroom. Its walls hung with faded silk. Quin and Satterthwaite followed. She sank down on the low settee, her head resting back on a rust-colored cushion. Her eyelids closed. The three men watched her. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and sat up. She spoke very quietly. "I killed him," she said. "That's what I came to tell you. I killed him." There was a moment's agonized silence. Mr. Satterthwaite's heart missed a beat. "Lady Dwighton," said Melrose, "you've had a great shock. You're unstrung. I don't think you quite know what you're saying." Would she draw back now, while there was yet time? "I know perfectly what I'm saying. It was I who shot him." Two of the men in the room gasped. The other made no sound. Laura Dwighton leaned still farther forward. "Don't you understand? I came down and shot him. I admit it." The book she had been holding in her hand clattered to the floor. There was a paper cutter in it, a thing shaped like a dagger with a jeweled hilt. Mr. Satterthwaite picked it up mechanically and placed it on the table. As he did so, he thought, "That's a dangerous toy. You could kill a man with that." "Well," Laura Dwighton's voice was impatient. "What are you going to do about it? Arrest me. Take me away." Colonel Melrose found his voice with difficulty. "What you have told me is very serious. Lady Dwighton, I must ask you to go to your room till I have, made arrangements." She nodded and rose to her feet. She was quite composed now. grave and cold. As she turned towards the door, Mr. Quin spoke. "What did you do with the revolver, Lady Dwighton?" A flicker of uncertainty passed across her face. I dropped it there on the floor. No, I think I threw it out of the window. Oh, I can't remember now. What does it matter? I hardly knew what I was doing. It doesn't matter. Does it? No, said Mr. Quin. I hardly think it matters. She looked at him in perplexity with a shade of something that might have been alarm. Then she flung back her head and went imperiously out of the room. Mr. Satterthwaite hastened after her. She might, he felt, collapse at any minute, but she was already halfway up the staircase, displaying no sign of her earlier weakness. The scared-looking maid was standing at the foot of the stairway, and Mr. Satterthwaite spoke to her authoritatively. "Look after your mistress," he said. "Yes, sir." The girl prepared to ascend after the blue-robed figure. "Oh, please, sir. They don't suspect him, do they?" "Suspect whom?" "Jennings, sir." "Oh, indeed, sir. He wouldn't hurt a fly." "Jennings, no, of course not. Go and look after your mistress." "Yes, sir." The girl ran quickly up the staircase. Mr. Satterthwaite returned to the room he had just vacated. Colonel Melrose was saying heavily, "Well, I'm jiggered. There's more in this than meets the eye. It's like those dashed silly things heroines do in many novels." "It's unreal," agreed Mr. Satterthwaite. "It's like something on the stage." Mr. Quin nodded. "Yes. You admire the drama. Do you not? You are a man who appreciates good acting when you see it." Mr. Satterthwaite looked hard at him. In the silence that followed, a far-off sound came to their ears. "Sounds like a shot," said Colonel Melrose. "One of the keepers, I dare say." "That's probably what she heard. Perhaps she went down to see. She wouldn't go close or examine the body. She'd leap at once to the conclusion. Mr. Delangua, sir." It was the old butler who spoke, standing apologetically in the doorway. "Eh?" said Melrose. "What's that?" "Mr. Delangua is here, sir, and would like to speak to you if he may." Colonel Melrose leaned back in his chair. "Show him in," he said grimly. A moment later, Paul Delangua stood in the doorway. As Colonel Melrose had hinted, there was something un-English about him. The easy grace of his movements, the dark, handsome face, the eyes set a little too near together. There hung about him the air of the Renaissance. He and Laura Dwighton suggested the same atmosphere. "Good evening, gentlemen," said Delangua. He made a little theatrical bow. "I don't know what your business may be, Mr. Delangua," said Colonel Melrose sharply, "but if it is nothing to do with the matter at hand—" Delangua interrupted him with a laugh. "On the contrary," he said, "it has everything to do with it." "What do you mean?" "I mean," said Delangua quietly, "that I have come to give myself up for the murder of Sir James Dwighton." "You know what you are saying," said Melrose gravely. "Perfectly." The young man's eyes were riveted to the table. "I don't understand. Why I give myself up. Call it remorse, call it anything you please. I stabbed him. Right enough. You may be quite sure of that." He nodded toward the table. "You've got the weapon there. I see. A very handy little tool. Lady Dwighton, unfortunately, left it lying around in a book, and I happened to snatch it up. 1 minute," said Colonel Melrose. "Am I to understand that you admit stabbing Sir James with this?" He held the dagger aloft. "Quite right. I stole in through the window. You know. He had his back to me. It was quite easy. I left the same way. Through the window? Through the window, of course. And what time was this? Delangua hesitated. Let me see. I was talking to the keeper fellow. That was at 6:15. I heard the church tower chime. It must have been, well, say somewhere about 1/2 past. A grim smile came to the colonel's lips. Quite right, young man, he said. 6:30 was the time. Perhaps you've heard that already, but this is altogether a most peculiar murder. Why, so many people confess to it, said Colonel Melrose. They heard the sharp intake of the other's breath. Who else has confessed to it? He asked in a voice that he vainly strove to render steady. Lady Dwighton. Delangua threw back his head and laughed in rather a forced manner. Lady Dwighton is apt to be hysterical, he said lightly. I shouldn't pay any attention to what she says if I were you. I don't think I shall, said Melrose. But there's another odd thing about this murder. What's that, Dee? Well, said Melrose, Lady Dwighton has confessed to having shot Sir James, and you have confessed to having stabbed him. But luckily for both of you, he wasn't shot or stabbed. You see, his skull was smashed in. My God, cried Delangua, but a woman couldn't possibly do that. He stopped, biting his lip. Melrose nodded with the ghost of a smile. Often read of it, he volunteered. Never seen it happen. What? Couple of young idiots each accusing themselves because they thought the other had done it, said Melrose. Now we've got to begin at the beginning. The valet, cried Mr. Satterthwaite. That girl just now. I wasn't paying any attention at the time. He paused, striving for coherence. She was afraid of our suspecting him. There must be some motive that he had, and which we don't know. But she does. Colonel Melrose frowned. Then he rang the bell. When it was answered, he said, Please ask Lady Dwighton if she will be good enough to come down again. They waited in silence until she came. At sight of Delangua, she started and stretched out a hand to save herself from falling. Colonel Melrose came quickly to the rescue. It's quite all right, Lady Dwighton. Please don't be alarmed. I don't understand. What is Mr. Delangua doing here? Delangua came over to her. Laura, Laura, why did you do it? Do it. I know. It was for me, because you thought that. After all, it was natural, I suppose, but, oh, you angel. Colonel Melrose cleared his throat. He was a man who disliked emotion and had a horror of anything approaching a scene. If you'll allow me to say so, Lady Dwighton, both you and Mr. Delangua have had a lucky escape. He had just arrived in his turn to confess to the murder. Oh, it's quite all right. He didn't do it. But what we want to know is the truth. No more shilly-shallying. The butler says you went into the library at 6:30. Is that so? Laura looked at Delangua. He nodded. The truth, Laura, he said. That is what we want now. She breathed a deep sigh. I will tell you. She sank down on a chair that Mr. Satterthwaite had hurriedly pushed forward. I did come down. I opened the library door, and I saw. She stopped and swallowed. Mr. Satterthwaite leaned forward and patted her hand encouragingly. Yes, he said. Yes, you saw. My husband was lying across the writing table. I saw his head. The blood. Oh. She put her hands to her face. The chief constable leaned forward. Excuse me. Lady Dwighton, you thought Mr. Delangua had shot him. She nodded. "Forgive me, Paul," she pleaded. "But you said that I'd shoot him like a dog," said Delangua grimly. "I remember. That was the day I discovered he'd been ill-treating you." The chief constable kept sternly to the matter in hand. "Then I'm to understand, Lady Dwighton, that you went upstairs again and, said nothing. We needn't go into your reason. You didn't touch the body or go near the writing table." She shuddered. "No, no. I ran straight out of the room." "I see, I see. And what time was this exactly? Do you know? It was just 6:30 when I got back to my bedroom. Then at, say, 6:25, Sir James was already dead." The chief constable looked at the others. "That clock. It was faked. Eh? We suspected that all along. Nothing easier than to move the hands to whatever time you wished. But they made a mistake to lay it down on its side like that. Well, that seems to narrow it down to the butler or the valet. And I can't believe it's the butler. Tell me, Lady Dwighton, did this man Jennings have any grudge against your husband?" Laura lifted her face from her hands. "Not exactly a grudge, but, well, James told me only this morning that he'd dismissed him. He'd found him pilfering. Ah, now we're getting at it. Jennings would have been dismissed without a character. A serious matter for him." "You said something about a clock," said Laura Dwighton. "There's just a chance. If you want to fix the time, James would have been sure to have his little golf watch on him. Mightn't that have been smashed, too, when he fell forward?" "It's an idea," said the colonel slowly. "But I'm afraid, Curtis." The inspector nodded in quick comprehension and left the room. He returned a minute later. On the palm of his hand was a silver watch marked like a golf ball, the kind that are sold for golfers to carry loose in a pocket with balls. "Here it is, sir," he said, "but I doubt if it will be any good. They're tough, these watches." The colonel took it from him and held it to his ear. "It seems to have stopped. Anyway," he observed. He pressed with his thumb, and the lid of the watch flew open. Inside, the glass was cracked across. "Ah," he said exultantly. The hand pointed to exactly 6:15. "A very good glass of port, Colonel Melrose," said Mr. Quin. It was 9:30, and the three men had just finished a belated dinner at Colonel Melrose's house. Mr. Satterthwaite was particularly jubilant. "I was quite right," he chuckled. "You can't deny it, Mr. Quin. You turned up tonight to save two absurd young people who were both bent on putting their heads into a noose." "Did I?" said Mr. Quin. "Surely not. I did nothing at all." "As it turned out, it was not necessary," agreed Mr. Satterthwaite. "But it might have been. It was touch and go. You know, I shall never forget the moment when Lady Dwighton said, 'I killed him.' I've never seen anything on the stage half as dramatic." "I'm inclined to agree with you," said Mr. Quin. "Wouldn't have believed such a thing could happen outside a novel," declared the colonel. "For perhaps the 20th time that night." "Does it?" asked Mr. Quin. The colonel stared at him. "Damn it! It happened tonight." "Mind you," interposed Mr. Satterthwaite, leaning back and sipping his port. "Lady Dwighton was magnificent, quite magnificent, but she made one mistake. She shouldn't have leaped to the conclusion that her husband had been shot. In the same way, Delangua was a fool to assume that he had been stabbed, just because the dagger happened to be lying on the table in front of us. It was a mere coincidence that Lady Dwighton should have brought it down with her." "Was it?" asked Mr. Quin. "Now, If they'd only confined themselves to saying that they'd killed Sir James, without particularizing how, went on Mr. Satterthwaite, what would have been the result? They might have been believed, said Mr. Quin, with an odd smile. The whole thing was exactly like a novel, said the Colonel. That's where they got the idea from, I dare say, said Mr. Quin. Possibly, agreed Mr. Satterthwaite. Things one has read do come back to one in the oddest way. He looked across at Mr. Quin. Of course, he said. The clock really looks suspicious from the first. One ought never to forget how easy it is to put the hands of a clock or watch forward or back. Mr. Quin nodded and repeated the words. Forward, he said, and paused. Or back. There was something encouraging in his voice. His bright dark eyes were fixed on Mr. Satterthwaite. The hands of the clock were put forward, said Mr. Satterthwaite. We know that. Were they? Asked Mr. Quin. Mr. Satterthwaite stared at him. Do you mean, he said slowly, that it was the watch which was put back? But that doesn't make sense. It's impossible. Not impossible, murmured Mr. Quin. Well, absurd. To whose advantage could that be? Only, I suppose, to someone who had an alibi for that time. By gad, cried the Colonel. That's the time young Delangua said he was talking to the keeper. He told us that very particularly, said Mr. Satterthwaite. They looked at each other. They had an uneasy feeling as of solid ground failing beneath their feet. Facts went spinning round, turning new and unexpected faces, and in the center of the kaleidoscope was the dark, smiling face of Mr. Quin. But in that case, began Melrose. In that case, Mr. Satterthwaite, nimble-witted, finished his sentence for him. It's all the other way round. A plant just the same, but a plant against the valet. Oh, but it can't be. It's impossible. Why, each of them accused themselves of the crime. Yes, said Mr. Quin. Up till then you suspected them, didn't you? His voice went on, placid and dreamy. Just like something out of a book. You said, Colonel, they got the idea there. It's what the innocent hero and heroine do. Of course it made you think them innocent. There was the force of tradition behind them. Mr. Satterthwaite has been saying all along it was like something on the stage. You were both right. It wasn't real. You've been saying so all along without knowing what you were saying. They'd have told a much better story than that if they'd wanted to be believed. The two men looked at him helplessly. It would be clever, said Mr. Satterthwaite slowly. It would be diabolically clever. And I've thought of something else. The butler said he went in at 7 to shut the windows, so he must have expected them to be open. That's the way Delangua came in, said Mr. Quin. He killed Sir James with one blow, and he and she together did what they had to do. He looked at Mr. Satterthwaite, encouraging him to reconstruct the scene. He did so, hesitatingly. They smashed the clock and put it on its side. Yes, they altered the watch and smashed it. Then he went out of the window, and she fastened it after him. But there's one thing I don't see. Why bother with the watch at all? Why not simply put back the hands of the clock? The clock was always a little obvious, said Mr. Quin. Anyone might have seen through a rather transparent device like that. But surely the watch was too far-fetched. Why, it was pure chance that we ever thought of the watch. Oh, no, said Mr. Quin. It was the lady's suggestion. Remember. Mr. Satterthwaite stared at him, fascinated. And yet, you know, said Mr. Quin dreamily. The one person who wouldn't be likely to overlook the watch would be the valet. Valets know better than anyone what their masters carry in their pockets. If he altered the clock, the valet would have altered the watch, too. They don't understand human nature. Those two. They are not like Mr. Satterthwaite. Mr. Satterthwaite shook his head. I was all wrong. He murmured humbly. I thought that you had come to save them. So I did, said Mr. Quin. Oh, not those two, the others. Perhaps you didn't notice the lady's maid. She wasn't wearing blue brocade or acting a dramatic part, but she's really a very pretty girl, and I think she loves that man Jennings very much. I think that between you, you'll be able to save her man from getting hanged. We've no proof of any kind, said Colonel Melrose heavily. Mr. Quin smiled. Mr. Satterthwaite has. Mr. Satterthwaite was astonished. Mr. Quin went on, You've got a proof that that watch wasn't smashed in Sir James's pocket. You can't smash a watch like that without opening the case. Just try it and see. Someone took the watch out and opened it. Set back the hands, smash the glass, and then shut it and put it back. They never noticed that a fragment of glass was missing. Oh, cried Mr. Satterthwaite. His hand flew to his waistcoat pocket. He drew out a fragment of curved glass. It was his moment. With this, said Mr. Satterthwaite importantly, I shall save a man from death. Erskamaus Tamer.